Hello! In this video we're going to talk about an overlooked aspect of video games that often gets ignored. This, of course, is versus CPU mode and its importance in fighting games. I'll specifically be talking about this mode as it applies to fighting games for a couple of specific reasons, but just note some of what I go over can apply to other game genres as well. So for those who don't know, versus CPU mode is a mode where you can battle it out against a computer-controlled player with custom set parameters. You can choose your own character, your opponents, your stage, number of rounds, music, and how many times you want to go for a rematch. It's a good mode for casuals like myself and those who want to relax for a quick match. A very basic mode for our intent and purposes. So, why is it so special? Well, it allows players to play the game without the need for another human. You can fight on your own merits without the need of someone next to you or the need to play online. Not having to rely on anyone to play is important. As we get older, it's harder to get friends and family to play video games together. Our lives just simply don't align at times. Versus CPU mode, in a way, kind of serves as a single-player experience. And that's important, even for multiplayer games. To back up a bit, for me, personally, I never got into fighters when I would go to the arcade. Sure, they looked great visually, but the controls alienated me. How to do a combo, specials, it was hard to wrap my head around, and because I was spending quarters for every attempt, I gravitated towards older games that were simpler to understand and ones where I felt like I got my money's worth. I'm sure there are others like me with the same experience. But once I had fighting games at home, I started to understand them better, and ended up liking some of them a lot. I appreciated their uniqueness and one-on-one gameplay. The reason I fell in love as opposed to in the arcade, because the games included a versus CPU mode in them. And as a result, I was able to take my time with them and played hundreds of matches against the computer. It allowed me to experience a variety of characters and their play styles, all on my own terms and at my own pace. I became a casual fighting game fan as a result. However, games tend to not prioritize this mode that much. In fact, there are games out there that don't even have it. Smaller releases like Fighting EX Layer, bigger releases like Tekken 7, and compilations like Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection simply don't include an option to play the computer in their versus mode. Heck, even Mario Kart 7 doesn't either. Quite frankly, it's inexcusable, and the absence has led me to drop off these games pretty fast. It's wild to not have it, because I think we can all agree, in general, fighting games are pretty thin as it is with their content. So, I'll be exaggerating here, but these are the 5 main modes in all fighting games. Story, Arcade, Versus, Online, and Training. Story and Arcade can usually be finished pretty quickly and become one-and-dones for most people. Or in some cases, the story mode is bloated and goes on for too long and loses player interest. And if their versus mode doesn't have a CPU option, then for a single player experience, all you're left with is online and training mode. At least before the game's servers go down. Now, not every fighter is this barren, but a good portion are. On top of that, most of them are full price games. It's kind of ridiculous that even with how little they give you, you're blocked from content unless you buddy up with someone. Oh man, I do wish I could play this $70 game with my $500 console on my $1,200 TV, but Ethan has to mow the lawn. Just allow a versus CPU mode so people aren't shackled by someone else's schedule. And yes, online is great and can be experienced alone against strangers who are available at all times. And just like playing with someone next to you, you get to learn player behavior as well as what the meta is. And that's really cool, but versus CPU mode allows the player to get the matchups they truly want, and unless you know the person on the other side, you can't influence a stranger's character decision, nor the number of matches they are willing to play. Also, online isn't perfect, and depending on the video game or something else, there's going to be times where you either have slow matchmaking or a bad network connection. But I know what you might be asking. Isn't arcade mode or other modes where you fight the CPU good enough? Well, no. Those modes restrict players and give limited parameters on what a match entails. They can serve as goals and challenges, and even give out rewards to players, but the value of versus CPU mode is different. It gives the player the flexibility to cater to their mood and gives longevity and a greater shelf life to the game itself. Want to have a best of 5 against a level 7 T-Hawk? No problem. Like a specific matchup that you want to repeat over and over? Awesome. Want a CPU game to decide what you should eat for dinner? Fantastic. Essentially, it gives players a place to goof off, practice against an opponent, and better learn the game, all while giving them the opportunity to customize their experience and approach things on their own merit. But aren't you just explaining what training mode is? Surely that can suffice. No, and I might get heat for this, but training mode isn't for casuals. Training mode is for those who want to test out combos, get a feel for their inputs, and perfect themselves against any scenario, which is fine and awesome and can be quite fun, but doesn't serve the purpose for someone who just wants to play a simple match. Same can be said for tutorial mode, great to learn basics and advanced techniques, but some people are not going to sit through long text, let alone spend the time to actually take in what they're reading. Both are great learning tools, but are really only approachable if the player is already committed to investing in the game. Funny enough, versus CPU mode does help players learn as well. Sure, the CPU might do some dumb strategies, but it subconsciously helps players get a grasp for their characters, their opponents, the way the game feels, and what's what on the fly. It pushes players into the game by simply letting them play, and by playing, they are learning. Sport analogy. If someone wants to learn football, you don't point them to the hanging tires and say, throw the ball 30 times. That's not fun and you will chase them away. No, you get them to experience the game firsthand, and they'll discover their love for it. Super Smash Bros., the most casual, friendly fighting game series ever, knows this. Their versus mode is the biggest option on their main menu. Also, yes, just to point out, fighting games do have an option to spar with the CPU in training mode, but that isn't the same. You aren't in an actual match and are missing the pressure of having an actual battle. Conserving meters, watching your health, dealing with a time limit, it's not the same. Again, sports analogy, but that's like saying shooting the puck around is the same as getting an exhibition game going. The experience and the way you mentally approach each one are not similar. All three are very important modes, and each one should be experienced by all players. But one of them is really getting the shaft of the stick here. In conclusion, fighting games are fun and enjoyable, and video games are in general, but limiting the ways people experience them will undercut a portion of gamers like myself. There's been game releases that have corrected these concerns, but I still felt like making this video because it's something I've noticed, and it hasn't been addressed that much. Thank you so much for your time, hope you subscribe, and stay tuned for videos like these as well as different ones in the future.